Good morning, everyone. Mr. Maynard here, and I just wanted to provide a brief overview of this week's topic. This week, we're going to be exploring the topic of sexism, and it's a concept that's central to understanding both diversity and difference within our communities. Whenever we hear the word sexism, we often think of the obvious examples: unequal pay, offensive jokes, or barriers to advancement. But sexism is broader than individual behaviors. It's a set of beliefs and systems that privilege one gender over another. In this lecture, we'll look at what sexism actually is and how it connects to gender stereotypes, the impact sexism has on both individuals and on society as a whole, and what we can do, both personally and professionally, to challenge it. As future social workers, you'll see how these issues show up in workplaces, communities, and even helping relationships. Understanding sexism helps us build more equitable environments and advocate effectively for our clients. Let's start with a clear definition. In plain terms, sexism is treating someone unfairly or unequally because of their gender. That can happen in obvious ways, like harassment, wage gaps, or exclusion from opportunities, but it can also show up in subtle ways that we might not immediately recognize. The APA calls sexism prejudice or discrimination based on a person's sex or gender, often reflecting stereotype beliefs or cultural expectations. So even though sexism often appears as an action, it's really rooted in beliefs about gender. Those beliefs come from gender stereotypes, the preconceived ideas that define how men and women are supposed to act. For example, women are nurturing, so they should work in care roles, or the idea that men are assertive, so they should lead or make decisions. While it's important that what's important is that stereotypes may look positive on the surface, but they still limit people's freedom and opportunity. When these stereotypes become normalized, they justify unequal treatment. That's when we move from bias to sexism. For instance, if a hiring manager unconsciously assumes a woman will prioritize family over career, she may not get promoted. That's sexism built on a stereotype. In social work, we see the impact of this every day. Gendered expectation affect our clients' experiences, and sometimes even how colleagues treat each other. Our job is to notice these patterns and challenge them, because equality isn't just about fairness, it's also about opportunity and dignity. It's important to remember that sexism and gender roles don't just hurt individuals. It harms society on multiple levels. Let's start with the workplace. According to the Pew Research 2023, the gender pay gap in the U.S. remains around 82 cents for every dollar earned by men, and this figure hasn't changed much in 2 decades. Women also remain underrepresented in senior leadership roles. Only about 10% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. This has economic effects too. The American Association of University Women found that gender inequality in pay and opportunity contributes to slower economic growth and less financial security for families. There are also social and psychological effects of sexism. Sexism reinforces, as we've discussed, rigid gender roles. For example, expecting men to suppress emotion or discouraging women from leadership. This can lead to harms in mental health and personal development. Finally, the American Psychological Association has linked long-term exposure to sexist environments with higher stress, anxiety, and burnout rates, especially for women in male-dominated fields. Finally, there's a cultural cost to sexism. When one gender's ideas and voices are undervalued, society loses creativity, empathy, and innovation. In short, sexism isn't just unfair. It's inefficient. Everyone loses when equality is undermined. So, what can be done about sexism? The key is to recognize that change happens at multiple levels: personal, organizational, and societal. Number 1, education and awareness. We can challenge gender stereotypes early, in families, schools, and workplaces. Talking openly about sexism helps people notice patterns that they might otherwise ignore. We can work on policy change. Laws and policies matter. Advocating for equal pay, parental leave, and anti-discrimination policies can help reduce institutional barriers. Representation. Including diversity in leadership ensures that different perspectives shape decisions. When women and non-binary individuals are visible in authority roles, stereotypes weaken. Personal reflection. Each of us can examine our own assumptions. Ask yourself, do I treat people differently because of gendered expectations? Remember, as we've learned throughout this course, we all have biases. Awareness is the first step towards change. And finally, advocacy. In social work practice, this can mean challenging sexist comments, mentoring inclusively, or designing programs that empower marginalized genders. Organizations like UN Women, EIGE, and AAUW provide practical frameworks and research on reducing sexism in the workplace and beyond. Remember, progress happens when education, policy, and culture all move together. I also want to take a moment and share a short reflection from my own experience working as a social worker in Eastern Kentucky. In this region, most social workers are women. And as a man in the field, I've often noticed that my presence sometimes challenges people's expectations. When I first started working in social work, clients, and even some of my colleagues occasionally made comments like, "Oh, you don't really see too many men doing this kind of work." Or they automatically assumed that I wasn't a social worker, but I was a managerial or disciplinary role rather than in a supportive one. They didn't think I was working in the helping professions. They thought I was managing the helping professions. Now, none of these moments or comments were overtly hostile, but they revealed something deeper. The gendered assumptions that shape how people think about the helping profession or care work or social work. Social work is often viewed as a nurturing profession, and society still tends to associate nurturing with femininity. That stereotype can make it harder for men to be seen as empathetic helpers, and at the same time can also limit how women are viewed in leadership or decision-making roles. Experiences like these remind me that sexism affects everyone. It doesn't only disadvantage women, but it also constrains men by defining what is and what is not considered appropriate for them to do. Recognizing this helps me approach my clients and colleagues with more empathy and awareness of how gendered expectations shape all of our lives. Finally, to summarize, sexism is prejudice or discrimination based on gender, often rooted in societal expectations, gender roles, and stereotypes. Sexism is both individual and systemic, showing up in workplace policies, everyday interactions, and even self-perception. The effects ripple across society, from economic inequality to psychological harm that can arise from sexism. And finally, as social workers in training, or just anyone working in a profession, we have a role in recognizing, challenging, and dismantling these patterns whenever they appear, in agencies, institutions, and even our own interpersonal relationships. Thank you. I hope you found this helpful. There's a reference page at the end of this lecture. Again, this is just a brief lecture to help supplement your weekly readings and your videos. If you have any questions or you'd like to talk about any of these topics further, please feel free to reach out. Thank you and have a wonderful week.